Ambassador Nebenzia.
Спасибо.
Thank you. Could you all please put on your earphones? If you need them, of course. A great deal has already been said today about the challenges facing the contemporary world and the need to work on sustainable development, not in words but in actions, to uphold human rights and to properly use the potential of those who will come after us, that is to say, the next generation. And indeed, we are living in an age of major technological changes which are supposed to make our lives easier, but that doesn't always happen. Major climate changes risk bringing all of our civilization to the brink of survival in a few generations' time. In our view, behind these tectonic processes that are taking place, we need to be able to also see the fate of the individual person, the genuine builder and worker whose decent life should be our greatest value. Achieving this, getting humanity through this difficult time of dangerous changes that we are passing through and making the world safer for everybody is only going to be possible together. This is an axiom, but unfortunately, not everybody seems to share it at the moment, and it's difficult really to imagine that this correct path of moving forward into the future would be found given the growing disunity between nations and states, the crisis of confidence that has just been mentioned, and the absolutely massive complication of international relations, caused among other things by attempts to revise the basic tenets of the contemporary world. And I would like to recall that the last time that humanity failed to heed these warning signs, this led to a global catastrophe, the Second World War. Unfortunately, the atmosphere in which, in some countries, commemorations of the 80th anniversary of the beginning of the war have taken place, where, incidentally, Russia saved the world from fascism but was not invited. There have been comments at those events leading us to believe that, unfortunately, many have consigned the lessons of the past to oblivion. These poor students of history that Indira Gandhi spoke about previously are shamelessly trying to impose their ignorance on others. I think that they need to go back to their desk, back to the classroom, get their diploma, and only then claim to have their own opinions and teach them to others. We are very worried that some countries are once again looking at the world in black and white, actively raising artificial barriers and dividing lines, whether they be political or economic ones. They are constantly trying to find scapegoats and windmills, the windmills against which these modern-day Don Quixotes are waging a desperate but absolutely pointless war. We have no doubt that the creation of a multipolar world is an objective trend in the development of international relations. However, this does not mean, as the Secretary-General Antonio Guterres wrote in one of his articles, that all problems will automatically be solved. We still need to learn a lot from one another. First and foremost, the ability to listen to one another and respect a diversity of opinions and find a sensible compromise. Only then will multipolarity equate a just world order. To assist ourselves, we need to rely upon the structures that were created to make the world a better place and which have proven their commitment to the fundaments of equality and mutual respect in international affairs. And of course, I'm talking about the United Nations and its charter, which we need to defend with all of our strength, because the charter is the codification of multilateralism itself. In this document, which was forged out of the horrors of the Second World War, it already contains all of the key provisions of the multilateral and multipolar world order and the fundamental principles and norms of international relations, which incidentally nobody has changed. Sovereign equality of states and non-interference in their internal affairs, the peaceful settlement of disputes, the unacceptability of the threat of force and the use of force, respecting the rights of each people to independently choose their path of development, and upholding those principles is a fundamental factor in international stability and security. At the same time, states' desires to strengthen the multipolar foundations are coming up against attempts by some players to defend their privileged position in the world by revising principles of civilized behavior. They are trying to replace formulas that are gathering like-minded groups to agree within themselves, so-called coalitions of the willing, within themselves to agree on something and then sell the products, the outcomes of the discussion to the rest of the members of the international community. And behind these steps, there's an entire theoretical basis for this now. There's a serious threat to the entire multilateral system of relations, attempts by some states to replace the system of international law with a certain rules-based order. Often, these rules are a woolly interpretation and distortion and taking out of context of individual international legal norms for the benefits of an individual group of countries. It's even more surprising when decisions that are taken in such narrow formats are proclaimed and advanced under the banner of multilateralism. In fact, multilateralism and multipolarism is being replaced by temporary interest, which only leads to a further increase in conflict potential in international relations. The supporters of this concept, I would like to remind them that reference to any rules-based order is something that is missing, is absent in the UN Charter, and it should not be there. In Article 1, incidentally, also, there is a reference to the principles of international law. Now, of course, the world doesn't stand still, and constructions based on directions of human activity can also change. We've seen the Peacebuilding Commission appear, the Human Rights Commission and the Human Rights Council, many other structures that meet the needs of the time, but they are all based and they all rely on the legal dimension that they find in the Charter of the United Nations. Now, of course, we cannot say that the Security Council, we have to say that the Security Council, which today I have the honor of representing today, also needs sensible reform to improve its representativeness, above all from developing countries. However, that needs to take place in parallel with the preservation of its effectiveness and its ability to respond to emerging challenges. On the whole, we believe that on the eve of its 75th anniversary, the UN remains a universal global forum for the constant open and honest dialogue to create a more resilient and just architecture of international relations, and there is no alternative to it. The activities of the UN and the establishment of a multipolar world order can probably be compared with something that is what a good environment in international affairs depends on. It is only by combining these work through harmonious work that we can become a driver of mutually beneficial cooperation and fruitful partnership, where the philosophy of the balance of power and the fight for spheres of influence is left in the past. In order to do this, we need to refrain from phobias, stereotypes and different geopolitical games and respect the interests of one another and work for the future of humanity. And I would like to in particular thank the organizers of this forum. It's the second meeting in this format as I understand it, but I think that it is incredibly relevant to do these meetings, to hold these meetings regularly. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador, for that historical perspective, which I think actually worries many people around the world today, and for stressing some of the issues of the need for different forms of compromise and consensus.